Calvin T. Mann, leading EMIY, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to EMIY TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
How's everybody doing out there today? We are poised to have an interesting show here on EMIY TV where we actually solve problems and issues. We have the conversations that people don't want to have, but it's always about family. So this is called the Put Your Family First podcast, where we are discussing today. Hello, Heather.
Hello, Calvin.
Can't leave out the rose, right? How you doing, Monique?
I'm great.
Good. So we want you to chime in immediately. The number is 313-266-2811. There are people in your story that you forgot to acknowledge in your selfishness, the selfish mindset. Right? Well, we out here championing, yelling, and screaming. You raised your kids by yourself and things like that. So I wanted to have this conversation today because I think it's important that we have this conversation. Heather says you. What do you say? How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome today. You know, a little bit thrown off by the giant snowflakes that were kind of flying around, but for a few moments. But other than that, I'm awesome. I'm really excited about this topic. I think there's a lot of good nuggets in it. I think it's a lot that we can take away from it by having this conversation. So I'm excited to be here.
Yes. And it is a lot. I'd like to start with my reasoning for this conversation, but I'm sure you got a plan. So let's start out with your plan, and we'll flow right into this thing.
Well, thank you, Calvin.
You're welcome, baby.
First, I think that we really need to kind of define and refine what we're talking about. So the name of the topic today is supporting the village outside of home. But we're gonna drill down to the real meat of it, which is what Calvin really wanted to talk about today. But I think if we first have to start off by refining and defining what we mean when we talk about the village. And so I really want to have some discussion about how we have formally used the term village and to the new term that we are using as our EMIY team, which is our community traditions or traditional community. And that's kind of how we're going to look at the term village throughout today. I just want us to be on the same page because we have to look at it a little bit differently as we are actually redefining what that looks like, because what we called the village when we were growing up is a different traditions and different culture, acceptable culture in what we are seeing today. So I just want to make sure that we make that distinction and we're on the same page. We're starting this conversation calling it the village because that's what we were used to hearing. But now we're moving into the community traditions instead of the village. So when you hear that term shift, know that that's why we are shifting that term. All right, so a couple of questions I want to use to frame this conversation.
Here we go.
So the first one is, who is the village? And this is from what we used to believe the village was. And then as we get down to toward the mid part of the show, we're gonna make that transition to our traditional community.
If you can't say their name, you didn't have any intentions on having them in your conversation and in your life. I think it's important that we remember the value that our teachers, mentors, coaches, parents, neighbors, godparents, I think we need to understand the value that goes into building a child. And it's not just your parents, and we need to make that clear.
Well, let's start with having the conversation of describing what we used to consider the village. So you mentioned a lot of people who have influence and impact in a child's life. So growing up for me, I grew up of course, in Detroit on the west side, off of Linwood and Dexter. Went to Central, Durfee, Roosevelt, all in one complex. So a lot of the people you went to school with were your neighbors and people in your community. So when I think about the village and the description of the village to me, it included Durfee, Roosevelt, Central. So not only my school and the people who went to the school, but my neighbors and the people who you passed on the street walking to and from school, going to the community stores. We had... that's funny because one of my classmates now owns one of the stores that was in one of our community stores. We had, gosh, I can't even remember all the names. I do remember the names of the candy stores. Dee Dee's was one of the candy stores. Roscoe's was another one of the candy stores. And then Big Daddy was another on the candy store, which is also a record store. So all of the people at the store, because you frequented those stores, also knew you, knew your parents. And so that was what was interesting and how I kind of describe the village. So my neighbors, being able to walk up and down the street for me from Petoskey down to Rosa Parks, they had a paper route. So my family had paper routes. So the people on our block and in that community knew us because we were delivering papers. So that was another way that people knew my family. So, but I was and they were a part of my village. And so how I behaved and conducted myself in front of them was really important because everybody would check you on your behavior. And so it would always funnel back to your parents. So it would funnel back, it would be like the community drum. Like if you did something on this block, it would filter back down to your block. Your neighbors talking about it. Oh, did you hear what she did? And you walking by their head. We heard what you did. We're going to tell your mom, So you would hear that really easily. It would easy for you to have that message get home before you did about something that you may have done that was out of character or out of order. So
see how that conversation took you, and you didn't forgot who else was in the room and everything. That's
what my village does for me. That's
what
me.
I'm talking about.
Right.
That's the part that I'm talking about. That people have. That's why I wanted to have this conversation because people forget these things. We get into this mindset where we swear up and down, like the passion that we go at it about my mom. And the family after my parents' divorce. Like we're passionate. My mom, she did this, right? So in that story gets lost. The Mr. Cecils, the Mr. Thorntons, the Sunny Mans, they get lost in that story. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it's important for us to understand that we have to give these people their due because, again, it shapes who we are, and my mom and dad alone cannot get all the credit. But go ahead.
So the next component for me is, where is that village today? So as an adult, did I take some of those same values and principles into my life, into my community? And so as I've moved around from even different cities and states, it was always important for me to know my neighbors. And so what I did was introduce myself to my neighbors, tell them a little bit about myself, about my family. A little bit, you kind of ease in expectations about, so what kinds of things happen on this block? Do you guys have block clubs? I mean, so as you're saying those and asking questions, you're also setting an expectation about some of the things that you have as an expectation of a neighbor. Like, how do I communicate with you if there's something that you need to know or something going on? Is there a way to communicate with you? Do we exchange numbers or do we text? Leave a note on your door? I mean, really, because you want somebody to look out for you, so you want to build that relationship. So that's important to me and who my village is right now. An extension of that is because we have kids, and not small children. We have young adults but to know that your neighbors know who your child is is important too. So as they see them coming and going, and especially if they're older, they are not afraid to engage your child. Your neighbors, especially our older neighbors, they watch, and oftentimes they don't speak because we created this community or this neighborhood where saying something to somebody else is, it's a 50-50 toss-up. And people are afraid to speak to each other. How did we get here?
Drug culture.
How did we get here? And how do we resolve that? Where do we begin? What can we do as an individual to shift the traditions of community that we see now? Let's move that needle from the fear factor back into some level of faith and belief in the people that are around us. And how do we do that? Let's talk about that.
So, but you got to start in that place, right? So yesterday, for me, every year at a certain time of the year, usually around springtime, I acknowledge the people who made Calvin. I think it's important. So on my Facebook timeline for the last 7 years, right around springtime, I make a post acknowledging the people who made me. Why? One, when my parents split, who was there? Because, we have a tendency to only call the father when it's bad. We don't call the father when it's good. We have a tendency to do that when you split or divorce. Oh, you need to come whoop him and all of that, right? So that got wore out real quick. And I'm telling you, parents that call men just to discipline after you are to split up, that the only thing he's supposed to do is come whoop the child. You are not getting the full value of the father. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the neighbors today are not in position necessarily unless you are in a economic established neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Our neighborhoods that you used to grow up in, you might have those things. You don't have the same results. You can't allow a kid to go here and that. You have to manufacture that result. So just my opinion. That's why we have mentoring programs. That's how these other things that come into place, big brother, big sister, all this stuff manifested from the single environment. Debate me all you want to. I'm telling you, that's why it happened. So, for me, the first time I was exposed to swimming outside of the Cherry Line on 8 Mile, Mr. Thornton put us in a car and drove us to Metropolitan Beach. And this is in the mid-70s. Right? We 10, 11. When did Jaws come out?
Mm-hmm.
Late 70s, right? So Jaws come out. We at Metropolitan Beach. It's maybe 5 black people. And we 4 of them. Right? We swimming. We don't have no problems. Nobody said anything rude to us. The kids played. We played. And I learned, even at that time, I had an engineer's mindset. I was building castles and everything in the sun. Mr. Thornton gave me that exposure. His son, Mark, was the only child. His grandmother lived with him. So that's just one family that stepped in that exposed me to a new way of life. And I can go on because I acknowledge these people in my life consistently. I can even take it to Mr. Waldick, the mayor of Ferndale, and his son and their family opening up their home, and Mr. Waldick pouring wisdom into us. I learned. I could take it from my boy Todd's dad, who let us in Pleasant Ridge. I always saw big old crib, big backyard. We playing basketball Mom used to set lemonade on the table. Me and Todd would go to war till the wee hours in the morning playing basketball against each other. He'll tell you I was the first person to embrace him when he came to the high school. We're friends to this day. But his dad is the one who taught me about insurance. I can go on. You were at your, 30th anniversary?
My high school graduation.
Your high school graduation, right?
Right.
And one of your teachers was literally in their 30th anniversary dancing with y'all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and so that's a good point. So
yeah.
where that village extended for us, again, looking in the rearview mirror, part of that village extended to your school. Having relationships with your teachers. One of the first, my teachers that I think that had a greater impact on me was my first, she was my first, no, not my first grade teacher. Her name was Miss Dew. It was middle school. And her name was Dolores Dew. And she was so approachable. She was like auntie. You know, she was our teacher, but she kind of gave you the vibe of auntie. Like, it wasn't anything that you really couldn't say to her or do. She had expectations of you, but you also could talk to her. And I remember that distinctly about her. Also in middle school, I remember Miss Haslip, Vivian Haslip. She was, she would be, I guess, equivalent to a dean of students. I don't think that was her role at the time, but that would be her equivalent role. She and Durfee was a school that was amazing in its design and how things were available to you, but it was built for a different generation. So the school actually had a planetarium in it where you could, the ceiling opened up, and it was like going to the science center where it had the constellations and the stars. I didn't even know that was there. We had a dance studio on the 3rd floor. I mean, the building itself, the structure itself was amazing. And I, as a child, I didn't appreciate it like I do now. How important things like that. I mean, it was a full dance studio with mirrors and stretching bars and all those kind of things. But Vivian Haslip, I didn't even know that it existed until she opened up those doors. So she started a dance group. I was a part of that dance group. She had an expectation. She had an expectation, right? But I mean, in terms of the village, so we had teachers. There was one teacher, my kindergarten teacher lived in our neighborhood. I mean, that's the kind of relationship. She was a mean teacher as a kindergarten teacher. And Miss Bird, I know my classmates out there know who I'm talking about. She seemed to be mean growing up. Was she like that for real? I don't know. But from a kid, she was mean. So, but she lived in the neighborhood, and it's to be able to think of someone you went to school with and admired and respected and valued. Being a real person was always a shock when you saw them doing things that people do. But in terms of your village, the influence that they actually have on your life, the imprint that they leave on your life, is a lot of the shaping. Because I remember distinctly about Miss Haslip, is she demanded if we were going to be one of the people in her dance class, you had to conduct yourself as a lady. That was a benchmark in my life, because other than that, her setting me on that course, I was a tomboy. I would hang with the best of them, fighting, and that was because I hated to be challenged by the men and the boys in my community, thinking that I wasn't strong because I was a girl. So that was part of my fight. So, but those kinds of impressions of where that came from came from Miss Haslip. She always wore dresses. She never wore. I can't recall seeing her in pants. But she always had on makeup. She always conducted herself very ladylike, although she was very tough. And so being able to balance all those things, I saw those things that imprinted on my memory. And what she demanded of us as students, those things are still real clear for me. And I have embraced those things as part of who I am. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what our village at that time did for us. So as we move forward and look at the traditions of our community now, what kind of impact, what kinds of influences do teachers have on students? Oh, so you have some feedback?
Mm-hmm. No. Welcome to the party. You see, you when you start talking and giving and appreciating, you have a lot of things and people to acknowledge. I mean, like, if we don't say nothing, you gone.
Of course.
Right,
of course.
because you understand, you are now understanding the value that they brought into your life.
And the thing is, though, the point is that when you're a child, you see through a child's mind and eyes. How do we now, because you may not have had the same appreciation for the people. They were just, people in your life. You had an expectation, we're doing something different. As long as you respected and valued that person, it didn't necessarily say, you're my mentor. You're not thinking like that as a child.
No, you're not. But here's a great thing to that, right? You ready? Mm-hmm. This is what's so beautiful about this thing. When you became a parent, you automatically approached education with care the way your parents cared. So when you take that away, I can only approach education for what education did or what was for me. If I'm a victim, I'm going to blame education. If I'm not the victim, right? If I'm not the victim, I'm going to appreciate the education. Miss White, my elementary teacher, was fine. Miss White was finer than fine. You talking about somebody in the first grade. We all knew Miss White was pretty, right? And so as we grew older, when I became an adult, I saw Miss White as an adult, right? Had nothing but appreciation. Why? Because Miss White had a way of teaching us in class with care. You see? Mm-hmm. So if I was a disruptive kid, any of the teachers that I saw that where I was disruptive, I don't have memories of those teachers. I have memories of Miss Glenn, who was the choir, as I shared with my mentees yesterday. I was in the choir when Coleman Young became mayor. Hats off to Coleman Young, the first black mayor we've ever had. Hats off to Coleman Young, the first black mayor we've ever had. Miss Glenn lived in Royal Oak Township, who was the teacher that taught me around the corner. This is what we talk about. This is how you grow and become. We are not acknowledging our grandparents. We're not getting to know our aunties. We're not getting to know our uncles. Everybody is on perversion. You got so many people want to turn up. I want to be friends with my kid where we get high together, right? And we talk about, and then we gonna hide all of these problems. I want to be the one that, I want to turn up and get blown. No. The grandparents has the wisdom that you need. The aunties have the wisdom. It's just like I explained to the boy. When you go to the school, your job is to build a relationship with the person that is educating you. And that's for the parent and the child. All right, go ahead. I think I'm on to something here.
So the next point that I want to bring up is who decides or who determines who's going to be a part of today our tradition, our community traditions. Who decides? So if you're deciding who's going to be a part of the community traditions, who are you looking at? So when you step outside your door and you look down to the right or you look down to the left, who's going to be a part of your story? Who's going to be a part of the story of your children? And so we have to make some real good decisions. How do we build that relationship? Again, who decides? So the people who are in the midst of the experiences are the ones that truly decide who's going to have that impact. And if that impact is going to be a positive impact, or is it going to be a challenging impact? And so with that in mind, we want to make sure that we're making those decisions with some wisdom, with some knowledge, with some information, and to make sure that the expectations of what we have for someone else, that we're also willing to stand up to that expectation. So if you look out your door and you look down to the right, and what you see is something that you don't want or don't like, how do you start to correct that? Sometimes, there have been times in the different places that I've lived, and I looked outside my door and I didn't like what I saw. Maybe it was trash. Maybe there weren't flowers. Maybe there weren't trees. What did I do about that? What did I choose to do to bring to that community? Because maybe nobody was even thinking about flowers or trees or cleaning up the block. And so that was always an important part of me on building relationships. So I might go, put out a flyer a couple days before and say, I'm coming around because I really would like for us to do something different with our block. And once you get that notice and people start to know you, and that's another way to get to know each other. I'm not happy when I don't look outside and I don't see flowers or trees or a clean place to play or walk. I want to be able to walk down my street and not trip over glass and just that is my character. I'm not going to leave a space worse than I found it because I'm saying that that's not my job, that's not my problem, that's not my fault. If I look out and see it, it's mine. This is my neighborhood. This is my block, my house, my community. How do I make it better? So how do we choose is the question. How do we determine who's going to be a part of that?
We got some comments, right? Mm-hmm. One of the comments is from Marshall Hughes. My village was my family, and when I had children, their village was their dads, my parents, their grandparents, and their families. I can never say that I was alone in raising my children. No one had more impact on me than my family. And on Instagram, Shanice says she's not a stalker, but she saw the bus. She loves it. And Lonnie says, sending love and strength. Thanks for doing what you do. But I'm saying what you're saying, and how do we get them to say, right, and begin to understand and value? How do we get out of this perversion where we can't trust our people and our neighbors? How do we get out of this situation or these circumstances where we are protecting our kids instead of being silent? Because the disconnect, like you said, is real, right? Mm-hmm. But the disconnect is only there because, one, I didn't, right? So, of course, we had trauma. Of course, we had molestation. Of course, we had divorce, right? Of course, we had drugs. Of course, we had domestic violence. All of these things have impacted the community. We've had rape. We've had murder, right? We have an extreme amount of single households. All of these things impact your ability to have and circumvent a village. Mm-hmm. I get it, right? Certain areas, certain tax brackets, locations. Now, right now, everybody is talking about that, what they call that, where you move into the neighborhood.
Gentrification.
They call it gentrification. I said, I wonder if it's gentrification when you move into their neighborhood. What do they call that, right? And then, because we always got these terms and these divisional terms and things that separate us. But education is where it's being impacted the most. The household is where it's being impacted the most. Do you know there are over probably 30 to 40,000 kids who will age out of the foster care system, and the majority of them are African-American children? So when we talk about the village, I'm saying, where does the wisdom come from? This morning, you got out the car. I was so proud of you this morning. You actually walked up to a stranger's car and talked to someone. I know that was the first time I seen you do it without somebody prompting you. So I was proud of you, right? But she was sharing the information. I know she's shocked, right? Because she does it. I'm not saying she don't do it. I'm saying for me to come out the gas station and see her talking to someone and giving the card. Just so you know, while I was in the store, the little boy, he had bought vitamin water, junk candy, bag of chips, right? He spent $4. I said, hey, brother. He looked at me. I say, listen, brother, if you just got some mixed nuts, that's going to help your brain a lot more than them chips. Yeah, you might have to spend a little bit more, but you're going to be smarter in school because you're going to be able to stay up and stay awake. What you're doing right now is going to make you sleepy. And he looked at me, and I said, I'm just trying to explain to you. I got your back. And I walked out the store. When I walk out the store, she out there talking, right? And so it was the grandmother. The grandmother had said, you know, the grandmother is going on 100, right?
She was.
But she's taking care of them.
Right.
And that is not the job of the parent. When your child is at a functionable age, they need to be showing signs that they can care for themselves. They should be listening, because I was about to snap had she went toward that gas tank to pump gas. We was going to have a problem, because she was going to hear me be like, no, you are not about to pump that gas, right? But my point is, how do we, and I know you got questions, baby, so I understand. How do we get to the area for where trust is reestablished and built and our children are protected? Because there are over 40,000 missing black girls right now. And I'm telling you, it is because of the division that our children are not protected. But go ahead.
So, and thank you for acknowledging that conversation this morning. What prompted me to, first, there was my inner guidance was saying, one, to just pray for her. That was the first thing. The second thing was that when I saw a young man, she had girls in the car that were obviously girls in the car. But when I saw this young man step out, and I felt that she needed a resource for her grandson. And she was talking about grandkids and this and that and this and that and this and that. And so she was just venting. And she's just walking and venting, you know, pulling stuff out of the car. And that was really what prompted me to give her. I said, I stood a distance. I waved at her first. And I was like, I just want to give you some cards. And I showed her what I was trying to give to her. And she told the granddaughter to roll down the window. And I told them all, good morning. Everybody in the car, good morning. And I said, we have programs for youth, and I want to make sure I give you a resource. I said, I work with mothers and grandmothers raising kids. And she was like, girl, give me those cards. And I gave her the card. But finding common ground, I think, is one of the first ways that we can take a step toward building that bridge. What's your common ground? So for me, the common ground was when she said she's a grandmother. She's talking to herself. She's not talking to anyone in particular, but she's just venting. And I felt her when she was venting. So the common ground for me was that I understood the connection between mothers and grandmothers raising children. And so I wanted to reach out to her. I wanted to pour something positive into them for the morning, even if it was just a word of good morning, and given a resource. So that's the second thing. Where is the opportunity to build the bridge? So the opportunity to build the bridge was, one, showing respect. I was smiling when I walked up to her car. I took my time. I wasn't trying to, just be there uninvited, but to be invited. And I started with a greeting, a good morning. And not just to the lady herself, but to her whole family. I acknowledge her whole family. That's important. How you approach someone is important. That you're smiling or frowning or putting out energy that is that makes people raise their flags. That wasn't the way that I approached her, and I approached her family. And I appreciated them being open enough to receive the energy that I was sharing with them. And so one of the first steps that we can do when you hear that inner guidance, pay attention, because it'll tell you whether it's safe or not safe. So you want to listen to that inner guidance. The second thing is you want to find a common ground. What's the common ground? For me, it was her being I saw the young man, and then for her to have as she's venting, to have the conversation about being a grandmother and all the things that she's pouring into them. That was another area of common ground. And the way that I approached her was one of genuine care and concern. And so I think having some strategy, about how you approach and build that bridge is important as well. But we can build those bridges, even when you think sometimes people are unaware or unapproachable. How do you approach? Are you coming toward them with negative energy, with judgment already? I say hello to just about anybody who I'm walking beside, or if I make eye contact with you especially, yes, I'm going to say hello. Why not? If you choose to speak or not speak, that's not my issue. That's your issue. That's not my issue. And so I'm still good with that. I'm still going to offer you good and positive energy. If I feel my inner guidance is telling me that this is not a safe space, then I remove myself from that space. I follow my inner guidance because that is what is dictating me. It's the same connection that you have to me. And I'm listening, but maybe you're not listening. So I think we can still build those bridges.
It's a lot of noise going on. You don't have a lot of noise. So it's a lot of noise for people to trust their intuition. There's a lot going on. You don't cut the TV on like that. They're absorbed in the television, the internet, right? So they're heavy in the conspiracy theories. They're heavy into black denial. They're heavy into and speaking power to other cultures. They're heavy into racism is everything. They're heavy into these things when you're not heavy into the solution. See, you can't keep going the same way, right? Mm-hmm. It's a tsunami that way. It's a tsunami when you go that way. I'm going to go this way. And as I'm going this way, I see what the tsunami has caused. And so it has allowed us to see things differently, right? We can all jump into the frying pan and have the conversation, but somebody got to be able to raise their hand and say, hey, that is not how you treat your neighbor. Hey, here's an example. Being a role model that can be role played by someone who sees you, right? Here's an example of great things you can do, right? There are things that you can do that will make the community better. But if you do it, because of the television, you're so conditioned against your own skin that you believe. You see what I'm saying? You're so conditioned against your own skin that you have become your own oppressor, right? So your participation in these games continue to perpetuate the tsunami. So for us, what we have done is brought the parent in, gave the parent love that they never had, self-care, support. We pulled them in on a family level where they began to trust. I know I can leave my son with Calvin, because ain't nobody really protecting him like that. I see what I can leave him right there. If they weren't trusting the environment and for the outcome that's better for their son, they wouldn't participate. A lot of parents won't participate in these processes because they do not value their sons enough to invest in them. They expect everyone else to, but they invest in their daughters. And because you have been conditioned that way, you're still damaging the very community that you're saying, hey, help me. I need a man. But when we get into these conversations, you can't expect a man to become a man if a man is not guiding the man. I need my community. So I needed the Mr. Cecils, Mr. Thorntons, Sonny Mans, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Waldick, Mr. Griselle, Evan Lado. Evan Lado taught me the greatest lesson. And today I can get back up because Evan Lado taught me you have to have a certain amount of resiliency, which means I got to be able to tell you no. You didn't make the team. Now, what you gonna do to get on the team? Not, oh, I can't stand you, I hate you, right? This guy ain't nothing, I'm gonna take him over here. And everywhere you take that child, you got the same problem. You done took that child to 9, 10 different places, and you got the same problem. The same problem. So, what are you saying? Because you're taking them to 9 different places, and the same problem is gonna occur. In some cases, he's still going to be overweight. I was that overweight boy. See? So if I'm not going to be held accountable as a boy, I sure can expect him to be an accountable man. And I speak on that because that's what I work with. Is when it comes to us as people and restoring, we have to make sure that we build trust. Not expected.
For sure. That's well put, Calvin.
Woo.
That's well put. And so part of that building, again, is where's their common ground? There is a way to find the common ground. You can find the common ground in gender. I'm a male. Let me take this young man under my wing. I see something in him that was in me, and that's a lot of times, Calvin, that you speak to when you're mentoring some young men. I can see myself there, and so that makes me more compassionate toward this young man. But the other opportunity that we all have as adults, raising adults, it was a reality check that I had, thinking that I'm raising children. I'm not raising children. I'm raising adults.
Yes.
I'm raising our future leaders. I'm raising a family member. I'm raising a voter. I'm raising a person that can work and think and create. I'm raising an inventor. That's who I'm raising. We have to get out of the mindset again. But just like we talked about the concept of the village, while still existing, is different in our rearview mirror than what we're living right now. So we have to be able to pivot and change with the time and the opportunities that we have in front of us today. We do a lot, especially nostalgic people like me. We do a lot of looking in the rearview mirror. Well, the music that we used to have back in the day was this, and all of this back in the day is that. Everywhere. But what's important is that we also are able to address what's in front of us.
I'm on tour.
You don't lose the tools, because you're in the present. We have to make sure that we have present tools for present day. And so the heart that you have and the love that you felt in those communities, what does that translate into today? Using new tools today, because this is a new mindset of the children that exists today. It's a totally different mindset because we've given them a lot of entitlement. We taught them to be entitled, to not wear winter coats in winter because we're dropping them off at the door. They don't have to worry about crises and emergencies or walking distances because we created an environment for them where, one, it's not always safe for them to do that. And two, the trust of others is not there to create that safe space. And the third thing that we've done is we didn't want them to have to struggle. And because they don't struggle, they are now entitled. Because we've given it to them. We've given them entitlement.
Right.
We've given them the expectation that it's going to be easy for you. And I'm going to make it easier for you.
And that entitlement is what makes them struggle. So all you did was pile on the struggle.
In a different way. It's a different type of struggle.
Yeah, because what the complacency that it creates affects everything.
Yes.
So I'm not inventive. I can't go across the street and learn from the guy across the street because he now 60 on Viagra. He the new pimp in the neighborhood. Like, we got to get out of this space, right? Because I need the wisdom, sir. I need for Sonny Man, who gave me the nickname Fat Jive. You know why he gave me that name, Fat Jive? Because I was always talking. Right? I always had a story. And still to this day, I always got a story. So I always had a story. right? Hey, Sonny man, what's going on, Fat Jive? I'm talking about I'm 8, and my nickname is Fat Jive. Oh, I'm about to go down here, Sonny man, and teach the kids. We gonna work on the dance routine. I'm 8 down the street teaching the dance routine with all the other kids. In my drawers, in trouble, because I would leave the house in my underwear. Like that was normal, right? But again, we were protected.
And so as we build today, the tools, if you were able to feel protected in your village of yesterday, what is the traditional or the traditions of your community that you're creating today? How do you take that same energy and create that space today for the kids in your neighborhood or the kids in your family or the kids of the people you work with? These are part of this new community traditions that we have to build. We have to build these new ones. The nostalgia of what's in our rearview mirror is important, and it gave us something that we can be rooted and grounded in. But now we have to allow our children to build on our strengths and our surface and those values that we held dear. Now they have to build from that. How do we now recreate that in today? Our new tools. What are our new tools? We have everything from mindfulness, emotional intelligence, social interactions. All of these are all new tools. Let me just say new labels on tools today than we had and yesterday. It's just been recycled and updated. So instead of, the Village 1.0, we're in Community Traditions 5.1. So how are we navigating? Or what's the newest phones? The i14 or whatever. This is the new iteration for this new generation. We have to meet them where they are. They can't meet us where we are.
So let me ask you this then. Mm-hmm. So since we're winding up, right? So how to give two things, your two quick solutions to improve the building of trust in the community with your neighbors, and I'll give two.
So I'm going to encourage you to go to our website, go to www.emmyworld.com, look for the EMIY. The EMIY is a way to establish relationships. So the 3 principles of the EMIY, the first one is to engage, the second one is to empower, and the third is to encourage. So in those ideas for the tools for today, the first one for engage, I engage by just saying hello, smile. How many people need just somebody to send some good energy to them, to show what at least a sense of happiness or peace looks like on another person? Smile. Say hello. If you know their name or if it's someone that you see frequently, you have built enough contact for them to know, to recognize you. Ask their name. Address somebody by name. So my 2 items, real easy in the engagement area. Say hello, smile, and introduce yourself and ask their name. And then from that point forward, use their name. That's how we can build, just an easy way that we can build relationships.
1, my 2, we've been teaching our mentees these principles. Yesterday, each one of the mentees, because they didn't do it on Parent Day, had to develop an affirmation for their home. A positive affirmation. So I'm going to challenge you, the community, to come up with a positive affirmation for your home. It'll be a positive trigger for when the child is home. Any and everything that stands for will be present in the home. You got to think twice about this, because it's important that when you establish this, that means you can't be turning up in front of the house in front of them. That means you got to make them, you have to make the actual sacrifice for them to be taught and learn. So whatever affirmation these kids come up with, you have to set the tone inside of the home where that affirmation comes to life. That's the first thing.
And what's our affirmation before you pass it?
A positive affirmation.
What's ours at our home?
It's the house of can. That means anything we set our mind to is possible.
We can do it.
Right?
Yes.
That's it. So we established the house of can. Right? And so, take that. Run with it. But understand that anything is possible inside your home, all positive. So that's one. My second gift to you, truly, is to me, the most important part. Ask your neighbor how they became successful. We all know neighbors who drive nice cars, who pull up on the block. You want to know how they became successful. That's how you start building a relationship. You acknowledge that you see them successful, which then allows them to humble themselves to talk to you or speak with you or to share. Now, I understand there are a bunch of hardline people out here who, as she was saying earlier, don't like to talk, mind your business, play that whole game. That's drug culture. We're coming out of that. We are reestablishing our communities based on family. So you might as well get used to it. They might as well get used to it. We are intentful in this work, and that's how it's going to go. So the first one is to name your home a positive affirmation, and the second one is to make sure that you ask your neighbor, a successful neighbor, how they became a success, and listen. With that being said, Heather, where can they reach you at?
You can always find me at Your Inspired Journey. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. You can reach out to me by phone at 313-759-7855, or you can Google me and find my books, Heather Hetteru Miller. You can find me on Google. You can find me on Amazon as well.
Sound like we can find you everywhere. Right? So you can find me at EMIWorld.com or GoodFathersOnly.com. But again, as we close this up, I want you to understand that no matter how we see things, it is only reflective of what we see. So be careful and mindful of the things you watch, the people that you hear inside your ear, the places you go, and be careful of the negative things that they call black. You see? Because when you buy into those things, you buy out of family. It is important that you heed. When you buy into those things, you buy out of family. Monique, you can hit them, baby. Because this is what we talk about when we say thank you for coming to our family. And remember, put